Hey everybody, it's Dean. Welcome to Bring Back Rock. Today we're going to talk about my underrated albums from 1988. Make sure you drop your comments in the comment section. Tell me what your underrated albums were from 1988. I find I was going a lot more towards the hard rock aspect and the Sunset Strip scene during these years as I look back at what I have as underrated. So make sure you fill me in on the metal that I missed in 1988. Also, I always start these with like a recap of what was going on, State of Rock in 1988, you know, who was releasing the big albums and what was going on. So we're going to start with that, and then we'll get to my underrated albums. So 1988 may have been the pinnacle, like the apex of this type of music. It was huge. If you're a fan of music, this type of music in the 80s, read the magazines, we all heard about the festivals in Europe and everything, in the Castle Donington especially. But we never had that here. I mean, we had Texas Jam, and we had like in the 70s and early 80s maybe, the US Festival. We had our Metal Day at the US Festival. But in 1988, we had the Monsters of Rock tour, which really felt like the first time we had a metal tour, anything like that, like they were having in Europe. It started in Alpine Valley, Memorial Day weekend. I still have my Dokken shirt from that show. It was huge. It was a huge deal, that Monsters of Rock tour. Let's just go through those bands really quick, and then I'll hit some of the other ones. Started out with Kingdom Come, who was a new band on the scene, released a very Zeppelin-like debut album. Went gold. I think sounding so much like Zeppelin probably helped them at the beginning and hurt them going forward. I think they released a superior album a couple years later when they kind of went a little less Zeppelin-like. Then second up was Metallica. Metallica, at this point, they were mainstream. They were on the Monsters of Rock tour. They finally released a video for one that was played all over MTV constantly, very dark video. The album didn't come out really towards the end of the tour, maybe even after the tour was over, but they were definitely set up for success through that tour helped, and that video helped, and everything. It went huge. It was actually way, way bigger than I thought it was. I kind of think their next album, which went 20 times platinum, the Metallica album or the Black Album, probably lifted the album sales, but and Justice for All ended up going not 8 or 9 times platinum. So it's a huge album. After that, you had Dokken, who was still touring for Back for the Attack, but they also released an album in 1988. It was kind of their swan song album before their first breakup. It was Beast from the East. That was released really late in 1988. Scorpions were touring their Savage Amusement album, which went platinum, and Rhythm of Love was probably the big single off of that one. And then the headliner of the whole thing, the mighty Van Halen, led by Sammy Hagar on vocals. They released OU812 that year, and that was another huge, huge album. I personally don't think it was as good as 5150, but, you know, some songs I really liked, but overall I just didn't think it was as strong. Talking about Van Halen, David Lee Roth released a second album, his second full-length solo album in Skyscraper, which again was not quite as good as Eat 'Em and Smile, I didn't think. There were some songs I really loved, but overall, once again, not quite as good. Just like Paradise is probably the biggest song off of that album. The women made their way in rock and roll. Vixen showed up on the scene, had a big album. Lita Ford finally broke into the mainstream with her third solo album. Again, I don't think it was quite as good as her first two, especially not Dancing on the Edge, is my favorite of hers. And I think she came back and made better albums after that too. But Lita, the self-titled album, was her big breakthrough album with Kiss Me Deadly and the Don't Close Your Eyes Forever, the duet with Ozzy Osbourne. Joan Jett returned to the mainstream and the charts. She had Up Your Alley was the name of the album. I Hate Myself for Loving You and Little Liar were the two big songs off of that one. A couple metal bands kind of finally broke through after a number of albums. Striper, To Hell with the Devil, went platinum, but it was actually the ballad that broke them, honestly. That album went platinum, and for the longest time was the highest selling Christian heavy metal album. Queensryche finally kind of hit the big time with Operation Mindcrime, which was the concept record. A couple sophomore albums came out that were really big. Cinderella came out with Long Cold Winter, and Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone, and Gypsy Road were two of the bigger hits off of that album. And they went a little more bluesy route and really solidified themselves as an upper tier band. Along with this band, Poison, who released Open Up and Say Ah, That was just a huge album. Nothing But a Good Time is one of the like songs that define the genre there, as well as the ballad Every Rose Has Its Thorn, which went to #1. Poison was really huge and did release, I think, a superior album, or at least a superior produced album over their first one. Living Colour released Vivid. They kind of hit big with Cult of Personality, but wasn't one of my favorite records. I do like that song quite a bit. There's songs on there I like, but I didn't personally love it, but it was a pretty big record. Bon Jovi released New Jersey. Let me see. I know. Oh, GNR released Lies, partially because Live Like a Suicide was getting so expensive among fans that did have it, that they wanted to get it out there for everybody else. So that's half Live Like a Suicide on one side, and then the acoustic songs on the other side. Patience was a big hit off of there, and a big controversy with One in a Million. You know what I'm talking about. The other big band that hit out of LA that year was Warrant with Dirty Rotten Filthy Stinkin' Rich, Down Boys, and then of course the two big ballads were big hits, Sometimes She Cries and Heaven Was a Monster. So those are some big ones. Some metal, Megadeth released So Far So Good So What, an album that I personally really like, went platinum. Iron Maiden released Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. I was having a little brain fart on the album between Painkiller and Ram It Down, but it was Ram It Down that Judas Priest released Ram It Down, which was really a big return. Remember, the last studio album was Turbo, and a little more commercial sounding. They returned to their metal sound, probably even heavier than they had been. Did include a not very good cover of Johnny B. Good, at least in my opinion. Didn't care for I love Johnny B. Good. I didn't really love the Judas Priest version of Johnny B. Good, but definitely returned to metal for Judas Priest. Both Priest and Maiden went gold, so they had returned. Then there was two bands that I had on this list in State of Rock, but I'm starting those out with my two underrated albums. Both of them, again, went gold, but I think they're underrated. The first one, LA Guns self-titled album. I got that probably the day it came out because Tracy Guns and the Guns N' Roses connection. I wanted to see what that was all about, and I love this album. I thought I liked it at the time. It's probably now too, just as much as I liked Appetite. Different album, different band, but I really like the songs on there. The big ones were Sex Action and Electric Gypsy off this album. Made it even bigger on their next release. So only went gold. LA Guns, I thought, deserved more with their debut album, as did this band. Another band out of LA, kind of coming out of the remnants of King Cobra, and that was Bulletboys. Bulletboys released their debut album. Everybody knows Smooth Up In Ya. Great song. I thought it was a great album. Kind of reminded me of classic Van Halen. I thought this album should have blown up, and it only went gold, so I'm considering this one underrated. Let's see, Shoot the Preacher Down, F Number 9, Kissin' Kitty, Smooth Up In You, like I said. For Love Money was the second song released as OJ's cover, and I think that's maybe the weakest song on the whole album. So Bulletboys, also in my opinion, underrated. All right, next up we have the band that's on my shirt, Black and Blue, In Heat. It was, in my opinion, probably the weakest of their albums up to that point. It only went to a 133 on the charts. Had some great songs like Get Wise to the Rise and Heat It Up, Burn It Out, and just really good, solid album. It was produced by Gene Simmons. It also, go watch my episode if you want to learn more about Black and Blue. I'll share this one story that's from there. If you notice on the In Heat album, you only see the guys from the waist up, and some of them have different expressions on their face. Like I said, produced by Gene Simmons. On the photo shoot for the album cover, Gene came over with an entourage of girls. There is a reason you can only see the guys from the waist up. That's all I'm going to say. All right, next up, we have a band that I loved, Circus of Power. This is probably my favorite record by them. It was their debut album, self-titled, Kicks Butt. They were one of those bands, maybe a little ahead of the time. They had all the tattoos. They looked kind of like a biker band. There's quite a few bands that were just starting to come out and look like this. Zodiac Mind Warp was one of them. There's a number of others too, but Little Caesar kind of looked like that a little bit. So that kind of had that vibe going with them. But some great songs on it. Songs like Motor, White Trash Queen, Heart Attack, Letters Home. It was kind of a gritty sounding album. It didn't do super good business. It only went to 185 on the charts, but Really good album. Check out Circus of Power's debut album. Next up, I have the Damals from LA via Chicago. They got signed almost immediately after coming to LA. There's some interesting things that were going on with the members from different bands and interactions they had with different bands like Diamond Rex and Poison, but I'll get into that probably when I do a Damals episode eventually. The album suffered a little bit from not the best production, but it did have some really cool songs. All I Want, 777, Action. Probably could have been a bigger album if they got a little better promotion and a little better production. Next up, we have Femme Fatale. They were signed to MCA Records. It was a self-titled debut album. It only went to 141 on the charts, although the singles, Waiting for the Big One and Falling In and Out of Love, got pretty significant airplay on MTV. The lead singer was Lorraine Lewis, gorgeous, and she kind of became the focus of the band, of course. If you want to hear some good Femme Fatale stories and get more info on that band, watch my Femme Fatale episode. There's some pretty good stories on that one as well. Next up, Frehley's Comet, Second Sighting, Ace Frehley's second album. A lot of people were a little disappointed with this one. Apparently Ace was back into drinking and drugs during this, wasn't in the studio as much, didn't have as much influence over the album, and a lot of people thought it suffered. I do not think it was as good as the first album, but I do think it was underrated and did deserve some love. They actually released 2 albums that year because they released Live Plus One later on that year. So 2 albums by Ace Frehley that kind of deserved a little more love. I do remember Insane got quite a bit of MTV play. Or was that good old-fashioned 80s video? Next up, Jetboy, Feel the Shake on MCA again. It only went to 135 on the record charts. Now, this album and band was poised to go huge there. It's kind of LA Guns, Faster Pussycat, Guns N' Roses, and Jetboy were kind of the ones that were about to be pushed. Go check out my Jetboy episode to see what happened there. It wasn't great. So, anyway, but they did end up with some songs in some movies, like The Burbs had a couple songs in there. Sam Yaffa replaced Todd Crew on bass in this band. She's Out of Control. It had the song Feel the Shake, but Feel the Shake, Bad Disease, Talkin', Locked in a Cage. That's a great songs on this album. It was probably produced, made them sound a little less raw than they normally were, but Jetboy, Feel the Shake, really good record. Check out my episode on there for the full story. Next up, Killer Dwarfs released probably my favorite album by them, Big Deal. It was their first major label release. Third album, first on a major label, was on Epic Records. It went to just 165 in the US and just 90 in their home state of Canada, where it did go gold. We Stand Alone, Desperado, Burn It Down, some of my favorite songs. Just the whole album I thought was really, really good and deserved to break them through. They had a little more success with the next album, but this still, I think, remains my favorite Killer Dwarfs record. All right, next up we have one that's kind of a surprise. The Pursuit of Happiness, which was actually more of an alternative band, but it's a band that an album I really liked. I really appreciate Mo Berg as a lyricist. He can be very funny. The big single off this, if you haven't heard it, you got to go listen to it. You'll probably relate to it a lot more than you like to admit. It's called I'm an Adult Now. That's probably their biggest hit off the record, but there's some really good stuff on there. It's produced by Todd Rundgren. It sold about 125,000 copies in the US, which isn't a ton, but it's not nothing. It had more success in Canada, their home country, where it went platinum and went to 28. She's So Young, Beautiful White, Hard to Laugh are some of the standouts, but the album's really, really good. Like I said, it's more of the alternative, but I thought it was more on the rock side of alternative. Like I said, go check out I'm an Adult Now if you haven't heard it by The Pursuit of Happiness. Next up, we have Quiet Riot, the self-titled Quiet Riot album. It was the first one without, the only one without Kevin DuBrow. It had Paul Shortino, formerly of Rough Cut, on vocals. It also had a different bass player, Sean McNabb, who was later in a bunch of bands, including Great White. But Sean McNabb took over on bass, and Chuck Wright was out. He took over for Rudy Sarzo. They kind of had a pretty big fall of grace. I mean, Metal Health went to #1 and 6 times platinum. Condition Critical sold 1.5 million copies, and it went to number 15. Quiet Riot 3 only went to 31 and sold 400,000 copies. And this one, the self-titled Quiet Riot album, only went to 119 and sold in the neighborhood of 400,000 copies. So did okay, but it definitely, you could see the progression of Quiet Riot going down, 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 even though this is a pretty good album with songs like Joker, King of the Hill, Cop a Feel. The single was Stay With Me Tonight in the video on MTV. Pretty good album. I suggest you check it out. It's definitely underrated, definitely deserves at least a listen. Okay, the next two are two that I really consider just albums I love, just classic albums for me. The first one is Rock City Angels' Young Man Blues. Of course, if you don't know the story, go check out my episode on Rock City Angels. It's pretty interesting. Johnny Depp was in the band at the beginning. The way they were shipped off to Nashville, there's conspiracy theories, everything else. Check that out. It's on Geffen, same label as Guns N' Roses. The lead single was Deep Inside My Heart, which I loved, and I really thought Deep Inside My Heart should have broke these guys big. Definitely a more bluesy sounding band, which is not how they started out. They started out kind of like the Dolls, and they kind of morphed into this bluesier sounding band when they went to Nashville to record the album. Really super good album. Songs like Mary, Liza Joe, Boy from Hell's Kitchen, Our Little Secret. There was a re-release of the original mix, which was done by Jim Dickinson, which just came out, and a lot of remix albums, I don't really notice that big of a difference. There was quite a bit of a difference on this album. So if you like the album already, go check out the Jim Dickinson remix. It's worth listening to. Next up, Roxx Gang, Things You've Never Done Before. Kevin Steele was the leader of this band out of Florida. Really, I think a really great album. A little darker, but definitely 100% catchy. Definitely full-on glam. But like I said, a little darker, a little heavier than most glam bands at the time. But really catchy songs like No Easy Way Out, Scratch My Back, Too Cool for School, Ball and Chain, Fastest Gun in Town, Eat Your Sex. I'm going to end up saying the whole album. So, like I said, great album. Just if I say it's great, check out my video on them if you want to learn about a little bit more. Next up, out of Minneapolis, Slave Raider. This is my favorite Slave Raider album by far. Side 2 was a concept album, which ended with a cover of Thin Lizzy's Jailbreak. Side 1 has the first single was Youngblood. Youngblood, which had a great riff. I love Youngblood as a song. That, once again, I thought should have brought them up a little bigger. They're legends here in the Midwest, especially in Minnesota, Slave Raider, but just didn't break through with their major label debut, What Do You Know About Rock and Roll? They had great songs. Youngblood, like I mentioned. I thought the guitar was great. What Do You Know About Rock and Roll? Is there Rock and Roll in Heaven? Once again, check out the video for a little bit more. Next up, we have another band that this album is one of my all-time favorites again. Love this band. Should have been huge. If you like Faster Pussycat's debut, you got to check this one out. It's maybe even a little sleazier, and Sally Cato, beautiful on vocals. Just a great sleazy rock and roll record. Songs like 17 Going On Crazy, Lick It Into Shape, Legs Up. The whole album is just great sleazy rock and roll. It got no promotion at all. I remember seeing maybe half-page ads on the album coming out. No video to put on MTV. If you didn't have a video in 1988 to put on Headbangers Ball, it was game over. You can watch my video on them, of course, to get more and maybe find out how Gene Simmons came into play and how Ozzy Osbourne came into play with the band. I mentioned there was a few albums that I really loved that were underrated. Vinnie Vincent Invasion is another one. They released their second album, All Systems Go. I remember our local radio station at the time played half of an entire album on whatever night it was, and Saturday night, probably Friday night. And they played the first half of Vinnie Vincent's All Systems Go before it was released. And I loved it. I loved the first album. I ended up getting this as a cassette on my birthday from some friends of mine. I remember that. The two singles were kind of the slower, softer songs on the album, which I think was a mistake. Love Kills was one of them. That was also on the Nightmare on Elm Street 4 soundtrack. But they should have released something heavier to, I thought the songwriting and the band was much, much better on this album than the first album. The first album to me had a little too much over-the-top shredding, which kind of overshadowed the songs. There's some of that on here for sure, but I thought it was a little more constrained and the songs were much better because of it. So Vinnie Vincent, All Systems Go, underrated album from 1988. And like I said, there's some albums on here that I absolutely love. This is another one. Zodiac Mind Warp and The Love Reaction, Tattooed Beat Messiah. God, it's such a good album. Kind of strange too. Prime Mover was probably the biggest hit and the first single. The video's bizarre, but it's a great song. If you're not familiar with Zodiac Mind Warp and Love Reaction, kind of look like a post-apocalyptic biker gang. Prime Mover is a great place to start. Great song. But if you're not familiar with them, they have little interludes at the beginning of the album and between songs, like strange poetry, just bad shit, crazy stuff. It's awesome. You really should check them out. They didn't do so great here. It was their first full-length album. It went to 132 in the US. It did go to 20 in the UK and had a little more success in their home country. In 2007, it was re-released on Rock Candy Records with 9 bonus tracks. So check out the Rock Candy release if you don't have it at all. It's a good one to have. So many good songs. Prime Mover, like I said, Skull Spark Joker, Backseat Education, Tattoo Beat Messiah. Just a great, great album that I totally love. I remember there was a concert, Ace Frehley, Guns N' Roses, and Zodiac Mind Warp. And I'm not positive, but I think Guns N' Roses opened it and Zodiac was second, but I'm not positive because I freaking missed the show. I know it was like 30 years ago and I'm still not over it. Still very upset about it. So I don't want to talk about it anymore. All right, next up, Noize Toys. Now this is a band, Falling in Lust Again is the name of the album. It was on Dream Doctor Records, I believe, so not a big label, independent label, very small. If you want to get it now, you got to pay between $70 and $100 for it, so I can't afford it. Somebody luckily has it loaded up on YouTube. You can check it out there for now anyway. Just you want some great 80s glam, hard rock, Noize Toys is the band for you. Go check out that Falling in Lust Again. Really, really good. I wish I discovered it earlier, more recent, but I love this album. Okay, next one. Another one I discovered more recently, not super recently, but not too long ago, Joanna Dean. The album was Misbehavin'. Really, really good album. She's kind of bluesy. She, as a matter of fact, the record company at one point wanted to turn her into like a country artist, but her love is hard rock, and she said, nope, I'm a rock singer. So I'm going to do an episode on her eventually, just haven't done it yet. But Joanna Dean, Misbehavin', really good song, really good album. If you want to go check her out, she does a duet with Tom Kiefer at Farm Aid. So go check out Joanna Dean. Great songs on this album are things like Bad Romance and Misbehavin', and She's Been Hearing About Me. I Miss the Money. Lots of good songs. Definitely worth checking out. Joanna Dean, Misbehavin'. Next up, I just want to mention this band, but I'm probably going to talk about them in 1989 when their album came out in the US, and they changed their name. The band is Kingpin. They became Shotgun Messiah, and we're going to talk about Shotgun Messiah in 1989. So, all right, the last two things I want to talk about are two soundtracks that came out that year. One that's kind of a favorite of the viewers here and on the Facebook groups I'm in is Black Roses. And this is a heavy metal horror movie, which was a huge subgenre at the time, with the best and most famous probably being Trick or Treat, and then Black Roses, Rock and Roll Nightmare, which if you haven't seen it, you have got to see it and watch it all the way to the end. It is insane. Rocktober Blood, just so many of them. Anyway, this one had Black Roses, the band, which consisted of, well, there's Carmine and Vinny, both brothers, both drummers. They pronounce the name different. One is Appice and one's Appice. I think Carmine is Appice, so I'm going to go with that. He's the drummer. Chuck Wright is the bass player. Mick Sweeta's in Black Roses. Alex Mazzy's in Black Roses. And Mark or Marcy Free is the singer. So it's kind of like King Cobra, really. But they're on there, and then some other bands like Bang Tango, Lizzie Borden, Tempest, Hell's Eve, just lots of really good heavy metal on that one. And then the other one is Beach Balls, the soundtrack, which is a soundtrack to the motion picture Beach Balls, which it's kind of a teen coming-of-age comedy with kind of set between a beach and the 80s heavy metal scene or hard rock scene. Gazzari's and Bill Gazzari's in it. DR Star is on the soundtrack, or Dr. Star, and he was also one of the stars of the movie too, so got to check that one out. So there's DR Star, Puss in Boots, Hans Naughty, Castle Black, there's a bunch of others. If you want to check out that video, I have a video of Beach Balls and music in the movie, I think, and then I also have the Beach Balls soundtrack. Nobody had it up there available to stream anywhere, so you can find that on my YouTube channel as well. So a couple soundtracks to listen to. All right, that's it for me from Underrated from 1988. Like I said, maybe the pinnacle. Like I said, there's 5 or 6 albums under these underrated ones that I just don't think are good, but I absolutely love. Tell me which ones I missed. Tell me which ones I got wrong. Tell me which ones you agree with. And thank you very much for watching. I know it's a lot, and I'll catch up with you on the next episode.